I was signing y'all. It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and of course, even though I'm very late, I just ended up very busy today with a lot of random things, but that did not mean that I was not going to come to y'all with the breakdown of everything that happened today in day 7 of the 2024 Washington Commanders training camp. I mean, Brandon Coleman, it looked like the MVP of the day today. We have Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin deep bombs, more than one, deep bombs, plural. We have the first one-of-one session so far of the off-season. So it's like offensive lineman versus defensive lineman 1v1. Wide receivers versus corners 1v1. Love it. You have, it looks like what the Commanders may have struck gold in this 2024 draft already. Samuel Cosme looks like a future All-Pro. Austin Eckler looks like he's turned back the clock. And maybe, just maybe, should we not give up on Jamin Davis just yet? We're going to dive into all of that and more because, of course, we're going to dive into every single position group on the team and all of the notable plays that happen from players, good or bad. And even some guys, there's some good and some bad. We're going to dive into all that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all the content. Really appreciate y'all for staying tuned. Really appreciate y'all for being patient enough to wait until it's 9:44 p.m. while I'm recording this Eastern time. This video may get out by 12 a.m. and then by then people are gonna already start looking for information and breakdowns on day 8. So if any of y'all that pull up and watch this video support it, I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you don't leave this video without leaving a like, and instead of wasting more of y'all time, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so before practice, you know, we already got to talk about a few things before we even get to exactly what happened. Y'all know we have a few things to cover as far as like who was there potentially. We got to mention some things that Dan Quinn said, some of the most notable things from there. We're going to dive into that. Again, today is the first day of one-on-ones. Really excited about that. Dan Quinn even said that the next few days are going to be a big one in preparation for the Jets practice next week. So just wanted to remind y'all that we will be having joint practices with the Jets next week, which will eventually lead to a preseason game versus the Jets as well in New Jersey. And of course, I'm gonna have y'all covered with all of that. And I will be live streaming during the preseason game, like it's a regular season game. We'll be breaking down all of the notable plays, good and bad, from the players, just like we do here. But it'll be live during the preseason game. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. And also, with there being 1v1s and the Commanders like really clamping down on not allowing people to record things, like shouts out to Bleeding Burgundy and Gold for tweeting the exact screenshot of the notification that he got on his phone. But while he was there at Commanders practice, he got a notification that said keep our plays on lock, and it was like an emoji for the lock, and it literally says in the notification, capture of photos and videos including by cell phones are not permitted during team portions of practice. Violators will be asked to leave. And I'm pretty sure it gets even further than that. You'll probably be banished from ever attending a practice ever again. They'll probably have like a wanted poster of like, do not allow this guy to ever enter the premises again type of situation. But I just thought that it's not really crazy. It makes sense. If I were the Commanders, I'd do the same thing. But I mean, they sent notifications to people's phones that were there. They were not playing. And Seawall Sports brings up a great point, because this is a process and it's leading up to next week, especially these one-on-ones. Next week at joint practices will really pull together the full story of what the Commanders have so far. Like I've talked about in a couple of videos now since training camp, and I've been doing these breakdowns. I've been saying that like when the offense makes a good play, you naturally look at the defense like, is the defense not good? When the defense makes a good play, when they get an interception or a fumble, you're looking at the offense like, are y'all not any good? I can't wait for these joint practices, because we'll finally be able to like size ourselves up against not only just another NFL team, but good ones. The Jets look like potential playoff candidates. The Dolphins do as well. And so if we go out there and look good, that's going to mean something. If our offense looks good against another team's defense, we can actually take away from the fact that we can finally, I mean, we can't assume that that's going to be the case going to the regular season, but it's a better snapshot of who we are and a better understanding of where we are as far as our team development, chemistry, and a lot of different ways with all of the roster turnover we've had. It definitely allows us to kind of gauge where we exactly are, what we need to improve on the most, and things like that before we get to the regular season. So even though there's still a lot of valuable information that comes from training camp. These joint practices are going to be even more valuable than preseason games, even more valuable than that. And then we get to the regular season when it's like, okay, it's real now. But that slow ramp up, I love these joint practices. I'm glad that we're doing them. I mean, the Ravens last year kind of showed you exactly what I'm saying. We looked so good at times against each other in training camp. You're like, okay, this guy's standing out, this guy's standing out. We went against the Ravens and we had individuals standing out at times, but overall, we got beat up by the Ravens, essentially. We looked better than what I expected us to look like going into that joint practice, but overall, you could tell who was the team that was a playoff contender, potentially headed to the AFC Championship like they were, and you could tell the team that was more than likely going to be drafting high in the draft like we ended up doing. And so hopefully, again, the Jets and Dolphins joint practices and preseason games are like a good indication of where we're headed this season. Like, you know, a little bit of fortune telling. I mean, it's not the end all be all, but it does have some strong implications as to where we're headed potentially this season. Also, just want to remind you that it is full pads again. I'm not sure if we're ever going to get away from the full pads, or we just fully padded for like ever until next offseason. Is this it for the rest of training camp, preseason, NFL season, or we just fully padded and that's it for the remainder of the offseason? I'm not exactly sure, but I know today is definitely full pads. Well, was full pads. And then also, of course, the first commander on the field, shouts out to Mitch Tisler for this again. Day 7, of course, it's wide receiver Bryson Tremaine, and this is now the 6th out of 7 training camp practices that he's been the first player on the field. And again, the one day that he wasn't, he was right behind Jaden Daniels and Sam Hartman, and he was like kind of like a close third, basically. And then also, I do want to talk about the fact that Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo were at practice today. So they had their camera crew and everything. And then after practice, they did a 7-minute long interview with Dan Quinn. It was like 6 minutes and 50-something seconds after practice. So make sure you go check that out, because Dan Quinn said a lot of very interesting things, especially about Jaden Daniels. So if you want to know about that, go check that out. Now let's move on to the injury part of this video. We have a few updates here. So Dan Quinn said that he was happy with the team reps that Newton got earlier this week, and added that his progress will continue over the next few days. Again, Dan Quinn said that he's pretty much good to go. But he didn't say it exactly like this, but the logic is, if we had an important game to play tomorrow, like a playoff game, Johnny Newton would play. But like, it's training camp, it's so early in training camp, especially, we haven't even gotten to the preseason yet. We're August 1st right now. It's no use in rushing him back. So even though he's healthy, they don't want to let him overexert himself. So they're kind of ramping him up. He's been doing team drills, but he's been working with the backups. Like he's been with the third stringers, and they're gonna work him up to the second stringers, and then at some point throw him out there with the starters who are more physical, who are stronger, faster, all of that type of stuff. So I understand the logic behind it. It makes a lot of sense. Just to let you know why Johnny Newton, we haven't been hearing a lot about him yet, because he is out there with the backups. But I did talk about in my last training camp breakdown from practice that we had 2 days ago, day 6, which was July 30th, there was something about, I believe, after practice or some type of drills they were working on, he was beating double teams. So Johnny Newton has it in him. We've heard flashes, we've seen flashes. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it, but you'll start to get more and more hype surrounding him once he's able to go out there with at least the second stringers. But right now he's out there with the third stringers, and I mean, we may be in a situation where third stringers are practicing here, and then maybe some of the first stringers are practicing there, and then maybe people just aren't paying attention to the third stringers. I'm not sure. That's just a theory I'm throwing out there, because again, I have yet to be able to actually go to any of these practices. And then also another injury update: Benjamin St. Juste is apparently back healthy, and because remember, he left practice early on Tuesday, but he was back in full action today, and he even got himself an interception. We'll talk about that later in the cornerback part of this video once we get to the defense. Also, people were noticing that they weren't necessarily seeing Cornelius Lucas at practice at some point today. And it also seemed like Andrew Wiley was kind of off to the side and wasn't even participating in one-on-one drills. Well, then Sam Fortier eventually came out and said around 9:57 a.m. that offensive tackle Cornelius Lucas is out today, but for personal reasons, per the team. Excused absence, all of that, not injury related, he's good to go. Then he also pointed out the fact that Brandon Coleman and Trent Scott are now your top 2 tackles, with Cornelius Lucas out for an excused absence, and Andrew Wiley, I'm guessing, banged up. And then John Comm came out and later said, like 30 minutes after that, like at 10:27 a.m., that right tackle Andrew Wiley hasn't done any full team work at all in the one-on-ones, and he was working with the field goal blocking. And remember, he's been dealing with tightness since going all the way back to Tuesday. Tuesday. So maybe that started to flare up a little bit more. Maybe they thought he'd be okay. He returned to practice a couple of days ago, and then maybe something happened, and now he's... I don't know what's going on exactly there. We didn't get like an official injury report there, but I mean, I actually believe Dayton even before Tuesday he was dealing with it, and I think Tuesday was when he came back and he was kind of practicing again after he left practice early, I believe, or something like that. Monday, something like that. Either way, Andrew Wiley is dealing with some type of leg tightness. We're not exactly sure because Dan Quinn didn't even feel the need to let us know exactly what it was. They just kept saying tightness. That's all we know. Now, moving on, before we start to get into the practice, we also have some important quotes from Dan Quinn. Nothing crazy though, because Quinn did say that he is removing the bias from players that they've signed versus players that are here from the holdover from the previous roster. He said, quote, "It's not on reputation, it's on performance. Every good player knows that," unquote. And I love that quote. With recent roster moves, Dan Quinn made it clear that there is no bias in Washington. Quote, "There isn't a sacred cow. As an NFL ball player, they don't want to be bull S-worded." And I completely agree. I love the fact that we're going in with that mentality. Everybody starts on a clean slate. Doesn't matter who you are. We talked about this in another training camp breakdown, I believe like 2 or 3 videos ago, where Terry McLaurin even talked about how much he likes that, where he's not getting treated differently from any other player on the team. He has to earn his keep and go out there and earn his snaps, earn his targets like everybody else. And he's having to go out there and really work for everything that he's getting. It's not just being handed to him. And he loves that. Everybody's holding each other accountable, from the players to the coaches, everything, and everybody's going out there and having to earn it. We're going to bring that discussion back up a little bit later when we're talking about another position group on the team. Just hold that note about everybody having to earn their spot on this team. Earn what you want. If you want to start, you better go out there and get it. Even if you're Terry McLaurin, even if you're Jonathan Allen, you better go out there and get it. Now, let's actually get into the quarterback. Let's start with Jayden Daniels. And of course, I'm always going to try to find some clips that people upload of him going through drills and things like that before practice even starts, just to kind of see how he warms up. You know, how you warm up matters. And so you have this clip that you're seeing by Linnell Willingham, my dog over there. And then also next up, you have this clip provided by Ben Standig of Jayden Daniels working on some scrambling drills ahead of practice. So that sounds like, you know, that was kind of like a foreshadowing that this is something that he's really trying to implement into his game consistently now. They didn't want him using his legs too much early on in the offseason. Now we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, start to utilize your legs, work on throwing on the run and things like that. I like it. Now let's actually move on to what happened in practice, like the exciting stuff outside of just the drills. Well, before we dive into what happened today, the Commanders, well after I uploaded my own video of the breakdown of what happened in the previous practice, again going back to July 30th, day 6 of training camp, we talked about how Jayden Daniels had a really good throw to Jahan Dotson. Well, here's that clip right here if you wanted to see it. And again, this happened 2 days ago from the previous practice, but I just wanted to make sure y'all saw that for those of y'all who didn't get a chance to see that ever. So even though it happened in the previous practice, not in the practice that we're breaking down today, just wanted to make sure y'all saw that. Didn't just want that to completely just go over people's heads and everybody miss out on that, because I really want to emphasize the fact that, like, yeah, that was a good toe drag by Jahan Dotson. And even in the clip that the Commanders uploaded, they said Han's toe drag, and they do this like it's perfection, like it's beautiful or something like that. And yeah, that was good too, but I'm way more impressed by the throw that Jayden Daniels made. Matter of fact, if you want to see the clip again, here it is. I mean, this throw is ridiculous. That's what we need to be paying attention to. Like, on the run and everything is crazy. Shouts out to Josh Taylor. Now moving on to what happened in practice today. Again, shouts out my boy Josh Taylor. He tweeted, "Sounds like Jayden Daniels is picking up where he left off on Tuesday and having himself a really good day." So back-to-back practices, even though they had a day off yesterday, still technically back-to-back practices. Jayden Daniels just balling out. And so again, moving to today's practice, Daniels was with the starters this time. And his first pass was a completion to Terry McLaurin working against Benjamin St-Juste. And Benjamin St-Juste had a really good day today overall. So again, we're going to get to that later. But Jaden and Terry just basically seem like they're building like an uncoverable chemistry right now. Like nobody can really do anything about it. You'll be hearing about Jaden and Terry several times in this video. It's on the way, but I try to keep things in chronological order. I don't want to just go Jaden Daniels threw this bomb to Terry McLaurin. Did he throw another one? No, things happened in between, and I try to again go in chronological order for y'all. And so Linnell pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels has done an excellent job of flipping his hips and shoulders on these rollouts, and it's the reason that he's so accurate. And I definitely feel like that's something that needs to be emphasized, because you know it's all about mechanics, man. If you want to be consistent, if you want to be accurate, it's all down to the mechanics. And when he's rolling out, yeah, it's great to be fast, but it doesn't matter if you're fast if you can't throw on the run due to lack of mechanics and lack of nuance to your game. He already has this thing mastered, basically, where he's on the run and he finds a way to at the last second kind of flip his hips and his shoulders, get him squared off, and technically he is moving and throwing on the run, but he does it in a way that it's almost like he's basically throwing it from the pocket, and that's why he's able to throw it so consistently on the run a lot of the times. He doesn't do that literally every time. Sometimes he's literally still running while he's throwing it, and then that's just pure natural God-given talent, I'm assuming at that point. But he does have a level of like maturity and mechanics to him, to where he tries to limit the amount of luck that's involved in his process. He limits the amount of talent. It's way more skill when it comes to things with him, and so that's why I'm very optimistic that he will end up being a great quarterback, because so many of his things are just like down to a science. It's not just luck, it's not just because it happened, it's not just because he's relying on his natural talent and athleticism. These are things that he practices, rehearses over and over again, and I really respect that, and it also has me very excited. And then moving on from that, Linnell also pointed out the fact that Jaden Daniels had a really good play action that led to a Zach Ertz big gain on a crosser. So he basically did a pretty good job selling it. The defense kind of bit on it a little bit. He was able to find Zach Ertz for a really nice gain. Hopefully that's something that we can implement consistently. Rookie quarterbacks do struggle when play action is not involved in their offense. I forgot the exact statistic, but like CJ Stroud, one of the main reasons that he had such a successful year last year as a rookie was because his offense was heavily play action based. And then it was like this data basically comparing guys like CJ Stroud, who had a lot of play action in their rookie season, compared to other rookie quarterbacks that didn't have a lot of play action, and like the statistics were crazy. So the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is showing already that not only does he want to implement play action into the and make sure that's involved in the play call and consistently, hopefully game in and game out, but then on top of that, Jaden Daniels also seems to excel at it as well. That's going to be big time for his success. Another Jaden Daniels to CJ Stroud parallel and comparison that we can make. Then after that, Ben Standig tweeted, "Big play alert. In 11 on 11s, Terry McLaurin beats Forbes immediately off the line." So it was straight from release, like right off the line. Terry McLaurin had the rep one within like basically the snap of the ball. And then Daniel sees him and leads him deep. And then the ball is perfect and it results in a touchdown. And it was a play where also, I feel like a lot of people missed this, but apparently Austin Eckler did a great job of picking up a blitz against Bobby Wagner. The Bobby Wagner, Austin Eckler stood tall and allowed Jaden Daniels to be able to even deliver that ball to Terry McLaurin down the field. And I'm also hearing that don't overreact. Even though Terry McLaurin got the best of Emmanuel Forbes on this play, Emmanuel Forbes has been doing a really good job of going toe-to-toe with him and battling with him constantly every day in training camp. They've basically been going back and forth of getting the better of each other. And so, hey man, just don't overreact. Emmanuel Forbes is having a really good camp, but at the end of the day, good offense is always going to be good defense. That's just the way that the literally the sport is set up. And if Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin are on point, there's really no DB out there that can stop them. So you know, you can't give Emmanuel Forbes too hard of a time. And again, he's been having a really good camp overall. And then moving on, Zach Selby tweeted later on another deep bomb from Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. And of course, the crowd cheers and chants Terry's name. And then also moving on, before we go to the running back, shouts out to Linnell Willingham for pointing this out. He said that he's seeing some elements of the Philly quarterback run scheme out there today. And he also said that the 2024 Commanders offense will be exotic smash mouth football. That's the way he wanted to word it. I'm very excited about that. So it sounds like Jaden Daniels will run more than what people probably expected. Because I know we kind of reversed our logic behind this, because we're like, Jaden Daniels can run really well. So we just kind of assumed, okay, well, then he'll probably run the ball a lot because he has great mobility. But then you're also thinking, especially as we're getting further into the offseason, especially after we drafted him, we're like, well, we kind of want to protect him. We prefer for him to play from the pocket as much as possible. So then I started to think, okay, maybe we will not use him in the run game as much as I hope. Now it's sounding like we probably will. So we're basically right back to step one. Maybe that's just me overthinking it. I don't know how y'all felt about it, but it sounds like I'm still worried about Jaden Daniels potentially getting hurt with us putting them in harm's way, but it sounds like it's going to be to the same level of like a Philly run scheme, like my boy Linnell Willingham said. Again, follow him on Twitter, great updates going to every practice and everything like that. And I feel like Philadelphia does a great job of keeping Jalen Hurts relatively healthy and unscathed in general. Now, I don't necessarily see Jaden Daniels doing like the 4th and 1 thing, the tush push and stuff like that, but I think outside of that, I think we can take sometimes you got to cheat on the test. Sometimes if somebody else is doing something really well, maybe sometimes you got to steal a little bit and implement it into what you're doing. And hey, man, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's working for the Eagles, why couldn't it work for us? Because if anything, Jaden Daniels is literally a stronger arm and faster Jalen Hurts. Like I said, even before we drafted him, if you want to give him a comp, I can see where you can say he's literally a faster and stronger arm Jalen Hurts and more accurate coming out of the college. Just literally better in every way, in my opinion. And if the Philadelphia Eagles found a way to get this level of greatness out of Jalen Hurts, why can't we do it with Jaden Daniels? But we'll see. Now moving on to the running backs. Again, Austin Eckler, that blitz pickup he had against Bobby Wagner was insane, man. I really want to make sure I really emphasize that because that's elite stuff. That's elite. That's really elite. Linnell even pointed out the fact that he said, nice sequence here. Eckler does a good job of picking up pass protection versus Wagner, and then Jaden Daniels was able to get a deep shot off to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. And he didn't necessarily say this at the end, but it sounds like Austin Eckler was the reason that play, that throw from Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown even happened. So is Austin Eckler starting to take the lead on the running back position? I know Dan Quinn even said it himself that it's pretty much neck and neck. They're not even like a 1-2 punch. They're literally a two-headed monster. Dead even. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, there is no starter. Maybe it depends on matchups or whatever. But so far, from what I'm hearing from camp, Austin Eckler has better ball security. He sounds like he's doing really well at picking up potential blitzes, like from a guy like future Hall of Famer Bobby Wagner, allowing Jaden Daniels to throw touchdown passes. If I had to guess right now, Austin Eckler may actually have the lead as far as the guy. If you had to pick one that may potentially get more snaps, I would bet on Austin Eckler right now. But I'm hoping, ideally, best case scenario, Brian Robinson becomes so great and just undeniably great to where you can't keep him off the field. Eventually, he replaces Austin Eckler. But that's not just it. Austin Eckler is also running the ball really well as well. Because Zach Selby said in his article after practice that he does for the Commanders.com, directly on the team website, he says, it seems like every play from Eckler gets a big reaction from the fans in attendance. So the fans seem to love him. He sprinted for a decent gain and made a defender miss during the first 11-on-11 period, earning a few oohs from the crowd. And I'm not going to lie, man, I've been hearing about Austin Eckler making good plays every day of training camp so far. I don't think we missed a day without at least hearing something about him doing something positive. He may have found the fountain of youth. I'm telling you, he may have hard reset his brain, booted it back up from his 2021 backup save file, and we may be getting 2021 Austin Eckler. And if we do, this offense is literally going to be unstoppable. I doubt he's going to be that, but how nice it would be if he actually does. Now moving on to the wide receivers. And as you can see on the screen, you have De'Ami Brown going out and catching a few passes, and Dan Quinn even said before the practice that De'Ami Brown has jumped out to him in specific areas. He highlighted when quarterbacks get out of the pocket to extend plays, De'Ami Brown's ability to accelerate and get open has been important. That is very large praise. I feel like this went over a lot of people's heads. If you were ever thinking that De'Ami Brown may not make this roster, I think people need to start really paying attention. Because first of all, that's one element of being a wide receiver that is very underrated just in general. The ability to get open and to stay open while a quarterback is scrambling around and trying to extend a play. If you're that dependable guy that quarterback can know when in doubt, this guy's going to be open once it's a scramble drill, and pretty much all bets are off. The X's and O's are cooked. cooked. Once we're like over 5 seconds into a play and a quarterback breaks the pocket, X's and O's are done. This is just pure natural ability to get open, and who's gonna make a play? Who's the better playmaker? Who's just a better ball player at this point? And the fact that De'Ami Brown, Dan Quinn went out of his way to highlight the fact that that's an area that De'Ami Brown has stood out compared to other receivers on this team right now is huge. And then that's even on top of the fact, like I've already told y'all, that De'Ami Brown is arguably our best run blocking wide receiver. You know how huge that's going to be. We just talked about how Jaden Daniels is going to be heavily involved in the run game, even more than I predicted. Plus, we have this two-headed monster running back. This is going to be a very heavily infused run game as far as our offense goes. We have great run blocking offensive linemen. We may still have some questions as far as can these guys pass protect for Jaden Daniels, but run blocking wise, I'm not worried about it at all. We've already been hearing and seeing clips of like this offensive line doing a great job of blocking for these running backs and whoever. Jaden Daniels escaping the pocket running for 40 yards. If De'Ami Brown can stand out as the best blocking wide receiver on the team, even better blocking than Terry McLaurin, it's going to be hard to get rid of him. So then you add on to the fact that he's one of our better wide receivers as far as when Jaden Daniels, who is a scrambler, I mean, a lot of people would consider his best trait being his legs and his ability to extend plays. If when he's doing what he does best, if De'Ami Brown is one of our better receivers as far as making sure he's open for Jaden Daniels to allow him to do what he needs to do, that's going to be highly coveted in this offense by Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, and all of these other guys. And then on top of that, he also has some potential as a deep ball threat. We've seen that with the deep balls that he was catching from Carson Wentz that one season at times. You know, they were very brief flashes, but they were still flashes. So, hey man, De'Ami Brown's stock may be going up. And then also, I already did a video breaking it down yesterday about the whole situation, but Byron Pringle is back on the team, but he's mostly here for special teams. I like inferred that. I kind of projected that would be the reason, and now we're starting to see confirmation from a lot of reporters around the team that he is there literally for special teams, more specifically returning, more specifically kick returning. That's why we signed Byron Pringle back. And JP Finley brought up a good point. Annual reminder that wide receiver and DB drills, when they're 1v1ing, are dramatically tilted into the favor of the offense. The offense is literally supposed to win. It's absolutely unfair. If a corner or a DB wins in a 1v1 drill against a wide receiver, that means that the DB did basically just outperform the quarterback and the wide receiver by a wide margin. Because good offense is always going to beat good defense, especially in a 1v1 drill like that. It's technically 2v1 because the quarterback's helping the wide receiver. It's not like they're just throwing up 50-50 balls every time. They're trying to throw it in a space where the wide receiver can only get it. It's technically a 2v1 against the DB, and like we've already talked about, I've said it several times, defensive back is the hardest job in the NFL. And then on top of that, you're going to take away his safety help, you're going to take away his scheme, you're going to take away the pass rush in front of him. It's just a 1v1 drill. Wide receiver has all day to try to get open until the quarterback just decides, okay, I guess it's time to throw it. I'm assuming there has to be some type of mental timer there. But either way, I really just want to emphasize what JP Finley said. DBs are supposed to get beat in these drills. If a DB doesn't get beat, you basically need to look at that DB like he played like a future Hall of Famer on that play specifically. I'm not saying the corner is a future Hall of Famer, but they look like it on that play. And so now going back to Byron Pringle, shouts out to Grant Paulson for pointing this out. At a certain point in practice, Byron Pringle just welcomed himself back to the Commanders with a diving catch in the end zone on a Jaden Daniels pass in a 1v1 drill. Pringle will be an interesting guy to track this preseason. Vet was added yesterday, so they brought him in, like I just emphasized, for kick return specifically. He's making plays on offense as well as a veteran. I mean, it's going to be hard to say he shouldn't make the team at this point. That's incredible. Now moving on to Luke McCaffrey. Apparently, Luke McCaffrey had an excellent run block against my boy, safety Tyler Owens, and literally threw him to the ground, clean block, and got dapped up by other players on the offense afterwards as well. Everybody was really proud of the situation. Linnell Willingham even tweeted, Luke McCaffrey blocking his A-word off just put 6'2" safety Tyler Owens in the dirt. And not my dog Tyler Owens, man. Not my dog. Luke doing my boy dirty. And I know Tyler Owens may be far down the depth chart, but he's still an alien of an athlete, like just absolute freakish nature of athlete. You can't just push somebody down or push somebody around like that unless you're just a freak of nature yourself. And on top of that, and I'm not saying or, I'm saying and, you also have the want to do that to somebody. You got to have an edge to you as well. So that takes me back to the fact that Luke McCaffrey is in fact a very athletic person. I feel like people are forgetting this because there is a lot going on in training camp and we're kind of overlooking this. But Luke McCaffrey is extremely athletic. Remember, I showed y'all on screen multiple times in other videos. I compared the relative athletic score between Luke McCaffrey and his brother Christian McCaffrey, who's a future Hall of Famer. And Luke had the highest score at not only just wide receiver, but running back as well. So do not sleep on how athletic this guy Luke McCaffrey is. Freak athlete. So it takes that to do that to a guy like Tyler Owens, but it's not just athleticism. To knock somebody clean on the ground like that, that's because you wanted to do that. That's because you were feeling aggressive. You have an edge to you, and that's going to bode very well for Luke McCaffrey in the future and this offense in general. If Luke McCaffrey can block like that consistently, this offense will literally be unstoppable. The same reason why I see Dyami Brown making this team as being a good blocker. I feel like a lot of people are overlooking how well these receivers can block and how much that's going to matter as far as who makes this roster on for the final 53-man roster when we head to the regular season. Luke McCaffrey's safe. We're good to go there. But a guy like Dyami Brown, that's how you stand out amongst the other guys. We have like 14 receivers on roster right now. You got to stand out somehow. And also moving on, Luke McCaffrey also beat Sanderstill to the outside and had a really nice grab. I believe it was in 1v1s at a certain point. Mike Sanderstill has been having an excellent camp, but I love to hear the fact that Luke McCaffrey's beat him. Again, wide receivers are supposed to beat DBs in these 1v1 drills, but it's still positive news to hear that Luke McCaffrey's out there doing his thing. And then, of course, Terry McLaurin. I mean, we don't really need to talk about him too much. We already know he was going crazy today, but even beyond the deep bombs and touchdowns from Jaden Daniels, he also, in 1v1 drills, beat Forbes off the line, and sadly the pass was missed, so I don't know who the quarterback was. Maybe it was Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota, but somebody missed him. But basically he got open against Emmanuel Forbes, and I did want to point that out, even though the pass wasn't completed. So that's why a lot of people probably weren't talking about that 1v1 drill moment. Now moving on to the tight ends, here's a video of Jaden Daniels throwing to Zach Ertz, just in case if you wanted to see it. They're building that connection. I'm liking how accurate Jaden Daniels is throwing to him. I feel like that's something that's like really underrated when you're talking about how accurate quarterbacks are. People run different speeds. Like Terry McLaurin is way faster than Zach Ertz. To be able to hit Terry McLaurin in stride with how fast he is, but then to throw the ball to Zach Ertz and still hit him in stride without overthrowing him is like a very extremely difficult skill to gain. Like that usually takes years and a lot of time to do, and the fact that Jaden Daniels already seems to be a little bit ahead of schedule in that way is insane. Now, y'all know I love Tyler Owens. He's one of the 3 players that I'm most intrigued by on this team. You know, one of my other top 3 guys is Armani Rogers. I'm hearing that he had a great day today. He's standing out. I'm willing to bet money he's going to make this roster just off of potential alone, but the fact that he's also making plays in practice, I mean, that made my day. Apparently John Com tweeted that tight end Armani Rogers made two acrobatic catches in 1v1s today, because you had wide receivers versus DBs, well, corners. You had the offensive lineman versus the defensive lineman, but you also had tight ends versus linebackers and safeties. And when Armani Rogers was out there, he was just making it look easy and making some acrobatic catches that not necessarily everybody can make. And again, when Armani Rogers is standing out and making big plays, it brings a smile to my face, because he's one of the guys that I'm rooting for to make this team arguably one of the most out of the entire team. And then you also had a really good catch over the middle from Cole Turner at a certain point in practice today. Linnell Willingham pointed that out. He also pointed out the fact that Cole Turner has been having a really good camp. And shouts out to my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold, because we talked about a few days ago that he tweeted, "I'm not going to buy into the Cole Turner hype again," which basically insinuated to me that Cole Turner was having a good camp. He didn't directly say that Cole Turner was having a camp, but it sounded like he was basically talking to himself. I'm not going to believe the Cole Turner hype again. I'm not falling for that one again. So it sounds like Cole Turner, from multiple people's point of views, is having a pretty good camp. Then moving on to the offensive line, hey man, get some snacks, because we got a lot to talk about here, especially Brandon Coleman Wise and why that's so important for us. So shouts out to George Carmi, first of all, to set it off. He tweeted, "One takeaway from today: I was surprised with how much time Dan Quinn spent with the O-line. He even uploaded a clip and a picture of Dan Quinn like right there with him, like hands on knees bent over, right there next to the offensive lineman, like just eyeing them, beaming them. Like if he had to pick one thing to micromanage about this team, even though he's a defensive-minded head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Cowboys and the Seahawks, talks and leading elite defenses. This guy, every time I've seen him really focused on a position group, it's consistently been offensive line. So I guess you can tell that if the head coach, who's defensive minded, is focusing that much energy and time into like really analyzing and trying to evaluate what's going on with the offensive line, that first of all lets you know that maybe that is obviously the biggest weakness on the team, because at the very least the head coach feels like it. But also, I mean, maybe we're starting to see some progress. Maybe he's like, okay, we're getting some things going. This is the thing. This is the most intriguing camp battle right now, and that's just what he prefers to pay the most attention to right now. Continuing with George Carmen, he said he spent a significant portion of practice just watching pass rush drills and protection, including even the second offensive line unit. So Dan Quinn is going out of his way to really pay heavy attention to what the offensive line has going on. Now, Sam Fortier also, let's just to remind y'all, he tweeted at 9:40 a.m. media is now not allowed to record the 1v1s. I know it's not a team drill like that notification warned people about from earlier, from the bleeding burgundy and gold with the notification that he got to his phone. But it's still, they're not allowing you to record the 1v1s either. All of it cooked. Don't even think about it. So, and Sam Fortier even continues to say, so your only chance of seeing them is if the team posts a video. Again, it's 10:20 p.m. Eastern time right now. They haven't posted it yet. I don't think we're going to see any of them. But then Seawall Sports tweeted, woo, the offensive line versus defensive line drills did not go as I anticipated, which kind of gives you a heads up, because when you hear that foreshadowing, naturally you think, okay, we're doing 1v1 drills. Our defensive line is dominant, at least interior-wise. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, come on. Once Johnny Newton gets going, we're good. And then the offensive line has questions. So that's what you would think. Going in, you hear offensive line versus defensive line. If you had to bet money before the practice even started, who would win the day, you would just naturally assume defensive line. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, of course. Well, Seawall Sports gave you some foreshadowing here and said that the offensive line versus the D-line drills did not go as I anticipated. Let's get to it. Starting with Brandon Coleman first. I'm telling you right now, we have our starting left tackle. He's impressed not only me, but it seems like pretty much everybody who's had a chance to go to practice recently the past couple of days. It looks like this guy, third round pick, that we were basically praying could be ready week 1 to be the starter. And I was kind of getting to the point where I was just, after we drafted him before training camp started, I was like, I mean, at least if he can take over at some point mid-season as our starting left tackle, I can live with that. It looks like he's probably already a starting left tackle right now, and not even just because the other guys are terrible. He's earned it. He's taken that starting left tackle job. Because shouts out to Mitch Tisler. He said, again, Brandon Coleman was a standout in 1v1 drills. He was the standout of 1v1 drills between the defensive lineman and the offensive line. Maybe he's even including wide receivers, DBs, safeties, linebackers, and tight ends. But I know for a fact, at least offensive line versus defensive line, he said between both groups, offense and defense in the trenches, Brandon Coleman was the standout. The standout. And this is coming from Mitch Tisler, where the trenches is his thing. Offensive linemen, the big guys, this is literally his thing. This is what he cares to evaluate the most when it comes to reporting for the team and things like that. He said also that Brandon Coleman showed good feet, good strength, and the ability to recover even when beat initially. Those are very big and very important traits that are imperative for a tackle to be consistently good at the NFL level, because tackle is another job that you could argue is a pretty hard job. Maybe not naturally on a snap-to-snap basis, but game-wise, a tackle could have perfect blocking for 45 out of 50 snaps. But if on those 5 snaps he allows 5 sacks, everybody's going to say he had a terrible game. Got to be able to recover, because my point is, you're not necessarily going to win every rep, every snap, every play off rip, where you just have control of the guy and that's it. There are going to be some times where they catch you off guard with how quick they get off the ball, with how strong they get off the ball. You need to be able to recover as a tackle. You have to have that in your tool belt. As great as Trent Williams is, he doesn't win initially every rep, but he always finds a way to win that rep by the end of the play. Brandon Coleman having that trait, I'm not saying he's Trent Williams at all, but I feel like that's a big time trait that people need to notice, that Mitch Tisler, again, an offensive line guy, is saying that he has. Then Mitch Tisler also went on to point out the fact that Coleman versus Jamin Davis one play, in one of those 1v1s, Jamin jumps off sides the first rep. So Jamin was getting a little antsy. I gotta step my game up to be able to beat this guy. This guy's been whooping on everybody. Then the second one, He got the inside edge initially, and then Brandon Coleman did a great job of resetting and ended up winning the rep, which goes back to my point that you have to be able to recover on these reps mid-play. You have to. You're not going to win initially every time. Nobody does. Some of the best offensive linemen out there, the reason that they're the best is that they're able to mirror edge rushers' movements. They're able to match them in strength, match them in nuance and hand movement, and also the ability to recover. That's probably arguably one of the most important ones. Then Linnell tweeted a little bit after that Brandon Coleman and Samuel Cosmi were undefeated in offensive line versus defensive line 1v1 drills. Cosmi and John Allen also got a little chippy at a certain point, which I thought was pretty cool. And wow, I mean, who would have thought? How crazy and unpredictable is it that our two most athletic offensive linemen happen to be the best performing in practice up to this point? It's surprising maybe that Brandon Coleman is already where he is in his development, which looks like the starting left tackle already. Yeah, there's that. But it's no surprise to me that our two most athletic, like freak athlete offensive linemen are the ones standing out the most in these 1v1 drills that we just had earlier today. Now, go ahead, in my opinion, just go ahead and name Brandon Coleman as starting left tackle. And also, go ahead and pay Samuel Cosmi long term. Those potentially are your two best defensive linemen already. And I'm telling you, Samuel Cosmi has a Pro Bowl season loaded. Maybe even all pro. But even beyond just the one-on-one drills, he had a great day on the 11-on-11s as well, from what I'm seeing and hearing from all of the reporters that were there at practice today. So he's not just a 1v1 all-star that is only good in those situations but can't perform well when it's actually like a real game-like football situation where it's 11-on-11s. He's not just a product of 1v1 battles, which is you're able to rely on your athleticism for a lot of that. Like, he's not killing it in the 1v1s, but then we get to the team drills and he's looking mad. It's not that situation. I wouldn't be anywhere near this excited about Brandon Coleman if that were the case, because athleticism can carry your performance in 1v1s. You can basically rely on athleticism, when in doubt, bank on athleticism, and you'll at least do fairly decent in the 1v1 scenarios. But the team drills require nuance, technique, awareness, chemistry with the guys around you on the offensive line. Things like that typically take time and development and experience, and the fact that Brandon Coleman is already ahead of the curve there is big time. Shouts out to Seawall Sports for pointing out the fact that 1v1s are cool, but it's ultimately what you do when the ball snaps in these 11-on-11 drills that solidifies your roster spot. Completely agree. And then next up, you have Linnell Willingham pointing out the fact that Allegretti, potentially a starting left guard, and Brandon Coleman did a great job passing off of a stunt. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. Is, yeah, you can dominate in 1v1 drills, and that's still great. That still would have had me hyped today. But the fact that he's also learning how to pass off stunts with the guy next to him, and he's learning how to perform well even in 11-on-11 drills, which includes a lot more mental. Again, 1v1s are really almost just basically physical. That's it. But once you get to the 11-on-11s, trying to figure out who you're supposed to block and all of that type of stuff, passing off stunts, which Dan Quinn's defense is going to incorporate heavily on a play-by-play basis. That's big time, man. I mean, I really don't know how much more to emphasize it. Zach Selby even said in his article for thecommanders.com, today was the first opportunity for fans and media members to see one-on-one drills between an offensive lineman and defensive lineman. And both groups had some extra energy as they went through the drill. Of the offensive linemen, Brandon Coleman was the most consistent, even more than Samuel Cosmi, apparently. He didn't lose a single rep and showed mostly impressive technique. We're not talking about, I mean, yeah, freak athlete. That's great and all, but that doesn't mean that you're ready to play on Sundays in your rookie season. We're talking about most consistent in 1v1 drills. We're talking about impressive technique from a third-round rookie. He had a strong punt and quick feet and allowed him to mirror his opponents. Both skills were needed to stall Cleveland Farrell, who's your starting edge rusher opposite of Dorrance Armstrong right now, who Coleman faced on the first rep, and then Dante Fowler as well, who's literally on the team just because he's arguably the best pass rusher we have on roster right now. You can argue that he's literally just a situational pass rusher. That's the only reason he's in the NFL right now, basically. And if Coleman's able to stop him, and that's literally what he does, that's his bag, that's big news for Brandon Coleman. Then Zach Selby finishes it up with saying, Brandon Coleman took all of the reps as a starting left tackle today as well. That seems like he's pretty much solidified that. And his pass protection skills certainly helped his case case in winning the job. So Jaden Daniels, you may be able to rest easy going into this week 1 matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you have Linnell Willingham, who later also tweeted, said, Brandon Coleman right now looks like a day 1 starter at left tackle. Not a surprise for a 3rd round pick to start, but here recently with this organization, very rare. And I really agree there. I appreciate that. That's funny, but I agree. And he also continued to say and finished it up by saying they've got a good one. But yeah, it's not like just a complete shocker that a 3rd round tackle is ready to start week 1 of his rookie season, but it is here. It is. Since when have our 3rd round picks been hitting like that, especially at tackle? Since how long has it been since we've evaluated the offensive line position correctly in the draft, no matter the round? So I'm right with you there. Then shouts out to Commanders Realm for bringing this up. A lot of positive Brandon Coleman news coming out of camp today. Next to Jaden Daniels hopefully becoming a franchise quarterback, Coleman becoming a franchise left tackle is the 2nd best thing that could occur in the coming seasons. I completely agree. Positional value wise, you can't beat Jaden Daniels and Brandon Coleman being Pro Bowl level players. You just can't beat it. I've talked about this in several videos already, so I'm not going to dive into that right now because we're already 47 minutes into the video and we still haven't even started talking about defense. We don't want to be here forever. I know a lot of people like these videos being this long, but we can't be here forever. Then also you have at Jaden Daniels MVP. He said getting a franchise quarterback and a franchise left tackle is hard. But also getting a franchise quarterback and franchise left tackle in the same draft is even harder. Gotta give Commanders GM Adam Peters his flowers if both Jaden Daniels and Brandon Coleman become those players. Again, we don't want to jump the gun. Neither of these guys have played a single snap in a regular season game at the NFL level. But so far, from everything that we can ask these guys to do, they have exceeded expectations. Their developments are further ahead at this point in training camp than we expected. And that's all great news. It's not time to just assume we're about to go win a Super Bowl. It's not even time to assume that we're about to make the playoffs or that Brandon Coleman and Jaden Daniels just can't miss. But as far as where we are now, August 1st, this is as optimistic as you could possibly be about those 2 players. And then also, Cosme apparently had a really good rep against Jaden Daniels. He literally slammed the Pro Bowl defensive tackle to the ground. Very aggressive again. At some point, it even got chippy between the 2. Felix Tremel, shouts out to him as well. Follow him on Twitter. He pointed out the fact that in offense versus defensive line drills, Cosme destroyed Jonathan Allen. Chris Paul also looked good as well. Don't forget about him. He started left guard for us quite a bit last year. Right now, he's looking like a 2nd or 3rd stringer, and that's really good interior offensive line depth right now. If Chris Paul is your 3rd string guard, your offensive line is actually cooking in the interior. I'm not gonna lie. And then also shouts out to Seawall Sports again, because they said day 7 of Commanders camp and day 1 of one-on-ones, I watched almost every offensive line versus defensive line rep. And the O-line won today. Samuel Cosme brought it every rep. Brandon Coleman is ... good, and good job to Chris Paul as well. So you're hearing multiple people say that Brandon Coleman, Samuel Cosme, and Chris Paul look great out there. Does this mean that we need to start thinking maybe Chris Paul can actually earn that starting job over Nick Allegretti or even Michael Dieter, who's projected to be our starting center, but apparently he's been getting first team reps at left guard as well, just to get a look at what he's doing. Don't read it too much into it, but Chris Paul, I don't know where he is on the depth chart, but if he's looking good out there, that could be interesting. Maybe left guard isn't as solidified as we thought, but apparently, according to Dan Quinn, we already know who our starting center and right guards are, and Tyler Biotish and Sam Cosme. But then he went on to say that actually left guard is probably the next position that's the closest to being solidified. So we might as well just go ahead and assume that maybe Nick Allegretti has that soul. But again, if Chris Paul can be an elite backup interior offensive lineman, we're cooking with fish grease. And then speaking of Allegretti, apparently he had a rep against Deron Payne in 1v1s, and Payne went for a long arm, and Allegretti did a great job of staying in front of him. I love to hear it. And then also, before we just officially completely leave the offensive line part of this video and move on to the defense, Braden Daniels got some work at left tackle today. Shouts out to Linnell Willingham for pointing that out, and then that was it. He didn't even specify how good or bad he looked, and then outside of him, nobody else even mentioned the fact that Braden Daniels got some tackle work. But the reason I wanted to point that out is because, according to John Comm and some other people that have been going to the practices, Braden Daniels, again, the experiment at left tackle that probably shouldn't play left tackle, probably should move to guard, as soon as Adam Peters and guys came and took over this franchise, he's been pretty much exclusively at guard so far throughout the entire offseason. Voluntary OTAs, mandatory minicamps, and even training camp. But now he's starting to get some look at left tackle. We'll see what that means. And then also, before we leave the offensive line, Linnell said that Julian Good-Jones had multiple bad snaps today. And basically, he had to get pulled to the side each and every time. So that sounds like a guy that you can pretty much bet is not making this roster. And then again, Andrew Wiley, just want to emphasize this, has been missing from practice for whatever reason. And I'm assuming that maybe it's some injury that may not be that bad, but there's a chance that he may lose that starting right tackle spot if he keep playing. But then again, this regime has hit a total reset button, and everybody, including Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Allen, which I foreshadowed earlier, has to earn their starting spot. So technically, Andrew Wiley being a starter last year has no effect on, it has no weight to who Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury end up deciding will be our starting right tackle. They all started from the same starting point this training camp. Everybody, Trent Scott, Andrew Wiley, Brandon Coleman, everybody. That logic is why Jaden Daniels is basically still out here getting second team reps occasionally, even though he's clearly our best quarterback by far right now. I love the mentality overall, even though I just feel like the Jaden Daniels is a little one ridiculous, but I love the mentality overall. And basically my point is, Andrew Wiley, if you don't get back healthy soon, somebody's going to end up taking your job. Now moving on to the defensive part of the video, of course, starting with the defensive line. Zach Selby said that here are a couple of more highlights from the defensive line one-on-one drills. Apparently, Deron Payne at some point had an explosive bull rush, which he used on a rep against Samuel Cosme to get to the quarterback. So Samuel Cosme had a great day, but again, Brandon Coleman apparently had an even better day, and maybe this is the rep why, where Deron Payne got the better of Samuel Cosme on one of these drills. Maybe nobody else ever did, but Deron Payne did that play, and that just shows how dominant he is, because I feel like Samuel Cosme is a future All-Pro waiting to happen. Pro Football Focus thinks he's one of the 3 best guards in the NFL. I would agree. And for Deron Payne to do him like that, to be the only one that gets a win against him today, I think that's very impressive. But we already knew Deron Payne was very talented. Can't wait for him to be more consistent. I think Johnny Newton, allowing that guy to get some breaks, to not be fatigued all the time, to not be exhausted, I think we'll start to see more of 2022 Deron Payne than the 2023 version that did not produce. I can't wait. Also, Dan Quinn said before practice that Jamin Davis will start to get some work at first and second downs linebacker. Interesting. He said that was always the plan, so he doesn't get too far from what he needs to do at that spot, but will stay as a defensive end on third down situations. That's very interesting. So Jamin Davis looking like a big tweener right now, where first and second downs linebacker, third downs defensive end trying to rush the passer. We'll see how that goes, but it sounds like maybe we don't need to give up on him, because from everything that I heard and saw so far since voluntary OTAs, this guy has been pure edge rusher, and that's it. No linebacker at all. But Dan Quinn is making it sound like, okay, well, edge rusher hasn't been working out as well as we'd hope, so maybe let's not try to fix what's not broken a little bit to an extent, and maybe let's just put him back at linebacker and see what happens. I know that Jamin Davis wasn't the best player, but he's not that bad. I feel like if for any reason he may not make our 53-man roster for whatever reason, I feel like he's talented enough to do so. I'm glad they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. He didn't deserve that. But I'm saying, though, like, he wasn't that bad. Like, if Jamin Davis ends up not making his roster for whatever reason, or is projected to not, I think you could potentially get something in a trade for him. Don't just cut him. He's too talented. He wasn't that bad. He wasn't the greatest ever, but he showed flashes. You saw that Falcons game. You saw at times, as long as he had a quarterback of the defense next to him, he was actually a pretty solid will linebacker. I don't think you just completely give up on that guy. I know this linebacker group is really deep, and especially with him struggling so bad at edge rusher right now, I think you give him another look at linebacker, and it seems like what Dan Quinn's doing right now, just to let you know. Oh, and so again, my point is, maybe should we not give up on Jamin Davis just yet? Let me know how you feel about that in the comment section. And then lastly, before we leave defensive line, Dan Quinn talked about Deron Payne. So let's go back. Let's double back, circle back to Deron Payne real quick. He said, quote, an absolute dog as a player. And again, this is before practice, before he even had that win against Samuel Cosme in one-on-ones. What's more impressive to see is he had more pass rush skills than I thought. You see how square and strong he is. Seeing his quickness for that size, it was rare, unquote. You got to remember, Deron Payne is a freak like athlete, like a freak of nature at defensive tackle. It's not typical for guys to move like that, just to let you know. And then I just also love the fact that Dan Quinn is just excited about the fact that this guy is even more nuanced and more seasoned than I expected. So that's even better. Linebacker wise, I don't really have much information there other than the fact that they're trying to move Jamin Davis back to linebacker a little bit more. I didn't really hear much news about Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, anybody like that. So hopefully I can dig up some more news as far as the linebacker group goes after next practice, which will be the day 8 of training camp. Now moving on to corner, we don't have a lot here as well, but Benjamin St-Juste, like I foreshadowed earlier, when he had a 1v1 rep, I'm not exactly sure who the receiver was, but he got an interception on Marcus Mariota. Now, of course, we hear Marcus Mariota throwing an interception. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, business as usual, but still, this rep is literally designed for cornerbacks to fail. And the fact that Benjamin St-Juste not only won the rep it's a big win for a corner to not even allow the receiver to catch it just at all. If the ball gets batted down, even if the wide receiver drops it, you have the right to do all of that celebrating. Even though you didn't do nothing, you can do all the celebrating you want, dancing and all of that, just because the pass wasn't completed for whatever reason. But if you're getting an interception on 1v1s, that's arguably the play of the day. Like that, I don't think people understand how difficult that is. But maybe, I didn't see the rep myself, maybe Marcus Mariota is just that bad and he's just that terrible. Maybe it isn't that impressive. But if Marcus Mariota is even half as decent as I hope he is as our backup quarterback, that's a very impressive rep there by Benjamin St-Juste. And I've been hearing that he's been having a good camp. Also, just to throw it back to the fact that Terry McLaurin got the best of Emmanuel Forbes a couple of times today, and Daniels did a great job of throwing dimes to him for touchdowns. John Comm also tweeted later on for the freak out crowd, because again, he and other reporters were tweeting about the fact that Terry McLaurin did beat Emmanuel Forbes. He said specifically for the people that overreact, Forbes defended McLaurin on a later throw in the practice in 1v1s, and basically he had all of the coaches happy. He did a great job. And again, that is a situation where the receivers are literally supposed to win. It's designed for them to win. The expectation is for them to win. If they don't win, you're more like, yo, what's going on with the wide receiver, more so than how good the corner is. And for the fact that Emmanuel Forbes was able to succeed in that scenario, in that situation, in that environment, that shows do not overreact when Jaden Daniels is throwing a bomb to Terry McLaurin, Emmanuel Forbes in coverage, because I'm telling you right now, that's just going to be something that nobody in the NFL can cover. Remember, Terry McLaurin got the best of Stephon Gilmore the year that he won Defensive Player of the Year. You know how hard it is to win Defensive Player of the Year as a corner? And then Terry McLaurin beat that guy easily, 1v1, had nothing for him. So I just really feel like, I'm telling you, just don't overreact with the Emmanuel Forbes situation. Terry McLaurin is just going to do that to people. And I think this is the year, especially with Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Cliff Kingsbury at offense, Terry McLaurin may finally receive the respect that he deserves of being a top 10 receiver at least. I think he's going to probably even surpass like 1,200 yards. We'll see. I don't think he's just barely going to crawl over into like reaching 1,000-yard territory. We'll see. Then safety-wise, I mean, I don't know. Defensively today, we didn't get a lot of news from anybody, anywhere that I looked, anybody that was tweeting, any articles or anything like that. The only real notable news from the safety group is that my boy Tyler Owens got bullied by Luke McCaffrey today. That's all I got, and that's my boy. I'm probably the biggest Tyler Owens fan in this entire fan base right now. But I'm gonna keep it 100 with y'all. When somebody has a bad play or a good play, I'm gonna be fully transparent, and Luke McCaffrey did my boy Tyler Owens wrong. He did him dirty. So, hey, man, learning lesson, Tyler. Learning lesson. Now, moving on to special teams. Now, we have quite a bit to talk about here. This is going to get interesting. Well, as you can see on the screen, that's our new kicker right there. We have a new kicker named Riley Patterson, and the Commanders went out and claimed him off of waivers. And y'all know me, I plan on doing a whole breakdown on the signing. I've just been extremely busy, so I haven't had the chance to. I'm going to talk about, like, why we signed him, where he came from, what are his stats from his previous stops around the NFL or wherever he's coming from. I'm also break down who we cut, because if you're signing players where we have a limited amount of people we can have on roster, other people got to go. I got to talk about the fact that we cut like Dallas Milne and stuff like that. So I'm working on that video. That's on the way. It's just not going to be in this video, but trust me, it's on the way. But also, shouts out to my boy Ken Johannesson at Burgundy Burner. Always agree with a lot of the things he says. is. He brought up a great point about this whole special team situation, especially Byron Pringle. He said, "Good morning, football friends. This is what practice barely even started. Yesterday's football transactions weren't about the wide receiver room. It was 100% about special teams. I already inferred that. I already guessed that. I projected that. Byron Pringle was being brought here for special teams specifically. The receivers that were released were never going to be on the final roster. They were pretty much just, just get rid of them. We'll keep it pushing type of situation. Byron Pringle will get a serious look for special teams duty, and he brings some value as a receiver as well." Then he also finished up by saying, "Riley Patterson has a decent chance of sticking around as the kicker this year, and perhaps even beyond the 2024 season. So my boy Ken Johannesson is pretty big on Riley Patterson. Again, I got to do my research on him and then do a breakdown of where he came from and whether or not we feel like he should be our starting kicker this year. We'll see how that goes. I haven't done my research on him yet. I've been super busy, but when I do, I'm gonna do a video breaking him down and all of that type of stuff. Now moving on, here's a video of Byron Pringle running some routes and things like that. And John Com tweeted, "Newly signed wide receiver Byron Pringle getting work in while the Commanders work on punt returns. Quinn wants Pringles as a possible kick return option." So just another reporter, just in case if you don't believe me, if you don't believe my boy Ken Johannesson and anybody else that said it, John Com said it as well. Byron Pringle was brought here for kick return duty specifically. But the fact that he's also making plays as a receiver, like we talked about earlier, that's interesting. That just only increases his chances of making his roster, because not only can you be one of our starting kick returners, you can also be a guy that we can depend on to contribute on Sundays as a wide receiver if need be, break glass in case of emergency. Dan Quinn also said that claiming kicker Riley Patterson fits into the theme of competition and basically brought back wide receiver Byron Pringle to compete in the return game in particular. So now Dan Quinn has even said it himself specifically, just to further back the point. But again, just to go back to this whole everybody's competing right now. It doesn't matter if you're Terry McLaurin or Jonathan Allen, everybody's competing. So he kind of felt that way with kicker, but it didn't matter even if we had that mentality or not. We need as much kicker competition as we can get right now. We do not have a starting kicker that I'm very confident in yet. We'll see if Riley Patterson could be that guy. I'm still not sure about Ramiz Ahmed at all right now. And then Dan Quinn also talked about the kicking competition. He said it'll take a while, but you're really looking for consistency. Again, like I talked about with the offensive line battle right now that we have in training camp, we better figure this out as soon as possible, because there needs to be a certain point where we identify the best guy as soon as possible, and then we can use the remainder of the offseason, training camp, preseason, and things like that for that guy to get as many reps getting better at his job. There has to be a perfect balance of identify the guy quickly enough, but also, don't just pick a guy on a whim too quickly. Make sure you pick the right guy, but we need to do it as soon as possible. Same thing with the starting offensive line, just like with kicker. But apparently we had a kicker competition today, like straight up. They had kicks from the 27, the 33, the 37, the 47, and the 53. Apparently Ramiz Ahmed went 5 for 5, and also Riley Patterson just got here, also went 5 for 5. So far, nobody has the edge, but we'll see. Now, I don't know if either of these kickers are any good at this point, but at least we have a real kicker competition right now, and we'll see where this goes. And then lastly, before we leave the special teams, on punt returns today, you had Jamison Crowder, Casman Allen, Jahan Dotson, Emmanuel Forbes. I'm assuming and I'm hoping Casman Allen is good enough to be your starting punt returner. That's the best case scenario. Again, a couple of videos ago, we talked about Dan Quinn emphasizing that once we put the pads on, the 5 players that stood out the most: John Bates on offense, especially blocking wise, Jonathan Allen and Dorrance Armstrong on defense, and then Casman Allen and Mike Sanverstill on the kick returns and things like that on special teams. So it sounds like Casman Allen, at least in Dan Quinn's eyes, has the advantage over everybody else as far as the return game goes. Now we need to find that guy that's going to be opposite of him in kick returns, probably why they brought in Byron Pringle to potentially be that. But punt return wise, I may give the advantage to Casman Allen right now, even over Jamison Crowder, because again, in the spirit of everybody start, it doesn't matter if you started last year for the Commanders for Ron Rivera. This is a whole new regime. Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, all of these guys. Jamison Crowder, love you, but it doesn't matter if you started last year. This is a completely clean slate for everybody. Everybody's starting from the bottom, and it sounds like Casman Allen may have the lead on that spot right now. And if Jamison Crowder isn't your starting punt returner, I don't think he makes the roster, but we'll see. There's still a lot of time left in the offseason. Don't want to jump the gun. Now, before we get up out of here, we have some interesting breakdowns from Felix Trammell, Mason Kinahan, and Grant Paulson, just overall about what they noticed at practice. Felix said, Quick camp recap. Jaden Nateri Deep is starting to click. Brandon Coleman is starting to solidify himself. Witt's defense will have some tricks, and both kickers made every kick, and the offensive line is about one piece away. So, and I'm assuming when he says the offensive line is only one spot that we're not sure about, I'm assuming that's right tackle. We got to see what's going on there. If Andrew Wiley isn't healthy enough or isn't good enough, whatever, we got to depend on Trent Scott or Cornelius Lucas. We'll see what happens there. Then Mason Kinahan. He said that the Commanders players that I think could steal a roster spot. Wide receiver Bryson Tremaine, 6'5". Tight end Armani Rogers, one of my 3 favorite players on the team that I'm most interested in right now, training camp wise. Cornerback Tariq Castro-Fields, he's gotten reps with the starters. And then you have cornerback Chiggy Anusium, I believe that's how you pronounce that. And then safety Tyler Owens, another one of my favorites. And Serge the Shooter brings up a good point. He's been going to the practices. He does a lot of the camera work. If you want to follow him, I definitely advise it because he gets a lot of great pictures and shots of like the practices and things like that. He leaded that. He, again, my main point is he's been going to the practices. The only person he pointed out was Chiggy Anusium. He said that he hasn't seen enough from Anusium so far, would have to kill the preseason to basically make this team. But he didn't say anything about anybody else. It sounds like Tariq Castro-Fields, Armani Rogers, Bryson Tremaine, and even my boy Tyler Owens may have done enough so far in training camp to where they may actually make this roster. Now, Armani Rogers and Tyler Owens are the guys I'm rooting for the most out of that group, and Tariq Castro-Fields is the only one out of that group that I believe has even gotten starting snaps. So I would bank that maybe one of those, hopefully those 3 guys make the team. And then Bryson Tremaine again is the only receiver taller than Luke McCaffrey, who's 6'2", but Bryson Tremaine is a whole 3 inches taller than him. Maybe that's the way that he makes the team, and he's been standing out. He made some great plays even just last practice, day 6, a couple of days ago. And then lastly, Grant Paulson went on a whole Twitter thread, and I thought a lot of his notes were really interesting, so buckle up. He said, leaving Commanders camp, it was hot, but season ticket members showed out. Today marked the first day of padded one-on-one work. Some observations from the 90-plus minute session. First of all, first tweet. Jaden Daniels was very impressive. He was accurate and made some really nice touch throws. Big time. We need touch. That's more important than accuracy. Then he said, didn't get to see many small window throws, but he was pinpoint. So that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that. Nobody else has really brought that up, that the windows haven't necessarily been that small, but he also pointed out the fact that it may not even matter because even though the windows have been open, he's been throwing it with so much accuracy and touch that even if the windows were small, those will still be completions. Interesting. I also loved how he interacted with guys on the sideline after reps. Love how he looked. Basically looks like a leader. On Jaden Daniels again. It seems like he has a really good feel for the offense, which is awesome. I also feel like he might also have a good idea of what he has going on and seeing from the defense at this point. So basically, pre-snap wise, we may be able to trust Jaden Daniels as soon as week 1 of the regular season to basically be like, okay, it looks like that guy's blitzing, this guy's doing that, change the protections, maybe audible, maybe make sure you're ready to go to a hot route. Jaden Daniels can handle things like that already. There are some veteran quarterbacks that have been at the NFL for years now and still can't even do things like that. He also went on to say, I want to see him versus the Jets next week, but today really impressed me. Great news about Jaden Daniels. Grant Paulson also said, I was enamored with Brandon Coleman. Yes, sir. He's huge. He moved way better than I thought. Everybody seems to say that, too. He got the left tackle starter reps today and looked like he belonged. Big time. Guard body with traditional left tackle arm and length. I liked him today. He also signed autographs for 45 minutes if you're into that. So shouts out to Brandon Coleman. He's starting to embrace his stardom. Now he's starting to move into that starting left tackle role. I mean, he hasn't been announced. It hasn't been made official yet, but he's even staying after practice 45 minutes after practice. He can go home. He can be eating. He can be spending time with his family, video games, whatever you want to do. He's spending 45 minutes after practice to sign things. So he's starting to embrace somewhat of like a star role. Like he's trying to be a leader on and off the field as a 3rd round rookie. Then Grant Paulson said Mike Sainristil is going to help right away. Music to my ears. The Michigan star flashed a few times, including while beating a Ben Sinnott block to blow up a screen to Terry McLaurin. That's big time. He moves well, plays physically. His time on the offensive side of the ball probably helps his instincts. Big fan of his game. That's a great point too. Him being a wide receiver until 2 years ago, maybe that helps him get into the mind of a wide receiver while he's being a corner, and that probably helps him knowing what a wide receiver doesn't want you to do as a corner, what a wide receiver does want you to do, and using that information against him because he is a wide receiver at heart. He just switched the corner 2 years ago. But yeah, man, I love to hear that. because we know Mike Sanford still can cover, and I see on his tape that he's very physical and can make plays against the run. But the fact that he beat Ben Sinnott, who's known for his blocking, and was able to get around him to blow up a screen to Terry McLaurin, that's big time, man. That's a guy you can't take off the field, whether it's passing, whether it's obvious running. There's no reason to take Mike Sanford still off the field until he taps his helmet and lets you know he's tired. Then also continuing with Grant Paulson's tweets, we have a few more to go. There was a defensive package that got me steamed up, and I was like, ooh, when I read this, I may do a video on this separately. Frankie Louvu was creeping up on the edge, standing up, so he's kind of like an edge rusher. Armstrong was standing up on the other edge, and basically he said that it will be hard to tell who's coming or going out of looks like that. Offenses will have no idea what our defense is doing pre-snap, and everything will catch them off guard, hopefully force a quarterback to hesitate, and that will lead to more sacks and maybe even more turnovers. Also, anything Louvu does gets me going. Baller. Can't wait to see him in the fall. So Frankie Louvu, just more compliments every single day, man. Then also continuing, Terry McLaurin was outstanding today. Not a surprise. You always knew that. Great leader, talking to Daniels on the sideline after reps, just a pro in everything he does. So even after, I've talked about this in previous videos and breakdowns, even after positive plays, Jaden Daniels is talking to the other players, most, usually guys like Terry McLaurin as well. Again, even after positive plays, I love that. And then he also said, I will say goodbye with a bold prediction. Samuel Cosmi is going to make the Pro Bowl this season. I've been telling y'all this. Even before I read this tweet, I've been telling y'all for weeks, really months, that he was literally the best player on our entire team last year. You could argue he's our best player on our team this year. Destined for a Pro Bowl. I think he has all pro potential, so Pro Football Focus even agrees as well. Shouts out to Grant Paulson for all of those interesting thoughts and very important points. Really appreciate that. And then also, before we get up out of here, just rapid fire, shouts out to George Carmi for pointing this out. Jaden Daniels got some extra work with the wide receivers after practice, and Terry McLaurin was included in that. Again, they could be taking time to spend time with their family. They could be going to get something to eat. Whatever you want to do. Practice is over. You are not obligated to stay here at all. These guys are after practice, even after having the great day that they had with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin connected for a lot of deep bombs for touchdowns today, and they look pretty much uncoverable. They still stayed after practice to work some more. Then also, shouts out to George Carmi for pointing this out as well. Practice ended. Offensive linemen were hanging back for a few additional reps as well. This team clearly shows and knows that they want to be better. They're staying after practice consistently. Players and coaches. I absolutely love it. And then Jacina Anderson with an update that the Commanders are signing defensive end Shaka Toney. Just wanted to throw that out there. We're not even going to dive into that. I just thought it was hilarious. I mean, I guess they're desperate. I don't know. Also, Geno Smith got hurt and is apparently out indefinitely right now. And we've been hearing how, like, Sam Howell has not been having a good offseason so far. He has not had a good training camp, but it looks like he's their quarterback one right now. He's the starting quarterback by default just because Geno Smith got hurt. We'll see if he steps up to the plate and actually ends up being a good quarterback. But again, out indefinitely does not sound good. But Sam Howell is the starting quarterback for the Seahawks as of today. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed. Video, please stick on that like button, stick on the subscription button, stick on the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. My voice is just about gone. My throat hurts. I need a bottle of water. I'm about to get up out of here. Please let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Let me know if there are any players that you hope that I can try to dig up information on and focus on in the upcoming training camp breakdowns, all of that type of stuff. Let me know how you feel about everything. Is it time to give up on Jamin Davis? Is Brandon Coleman already a good left tackle? Should we start buying into the Jaden Daniels hype? Is Frankie Louvu literally going to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL? Mike Sanford still potentially competing for defensive rookie of the year. Like, how much hype are we willing to give this team right now? Let me know how you feel about all of that. Of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like. Be on the lookout, because even though it's 11 p.m. right now, by the time y'all get this video, it's going to be 12 a.m. Technically August 2nd, which is another day we have practice. I'm putting this video out, and then after we have practice later on tomorrow / today, I will be doing a video on that as well. The videos are going to kind of run close, but I don't care. I promise y'all breakdowns of every practice. You're getting breakdowns of every practice, no matter how busy I am. So stay tuned for all of that. Really appreciate y'all. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. I really appreciate y'all. Catch y'all later. Shouts out to everybody donating to the channel as well. I'm out.